Okay, boys and girls, welcome back to part 2 of our circles lesson in coordinate geometry. And now that we've found the equation of the circle and graphed it with the center and the radius, now we're going to look at what happens when we are in what's called the general form of the equation. And the general form looks something like this: ax squared plus by squared plus cx plus dy plus some constant, and that's going to be equal to 0. And so that looks kind of complicated, and at first it'll be a little bit tricky because we are going to have to complete the square to do that. And as I hear the collective gasp from the class, and before you guys start picking up tomatoes and throw them at the computer screen, this completing the square is the easiest of all the completing the square types of problems that we've done before. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a bit of comfort as we go forward. Here are the steps. You must convert the equation form from general form to standard form so that the center and the radius can be identified. So the first thing you're going to do is we're going to play the apples and oranges game. We're going to group our x's together, group our y's together, kind of like combining like terms, and then we're going to move this constant to the other side. So if you remember, that's one of the key constants of completing the square. This is the one time we don't want something set equal to 0. I want the constant, this number all by itself on the right hand side of the equation. We're going to complete the square for the x terms, and we're going to complete the square for the y terms. And you got to remember, whatever we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other. So let's just jump right in. And so here's what it's going to look like. Here's a typical problem. X squared plus y squared, there are two squared terms, minus 10x plus 8y minus 8 is going to be equal to 0. First thing I want to do is I want to move this constant to the other side of the equation. And then I want to play the apples game. Let's get our x's together. I say apples and oranges. It's really not combining like terms. We're just getting our x's together and we're getting our y's together. Come back into focus, please. Pretty please. Thank you. Okay, so let's put our x's together. So we're going to have x squared, and then I'm going to have the 10x minus 10x. All right, so we got our x's together. And then I got to leave room to complete the square. Okay, so there's our infamous plus blank. Now let's put our y's together. So we've got y squared, and then we have a plus 8y, and then I'm going to have another blank. So we're actually going to have to complete the square twice, guys, on these problems. Sounds like a lot. It's really not that bad, trust me. And then we got to add 8 to both sides. I want to move this 8 to the other side of the equation. So that's going to be equal to 8. But remember, if I add two things to both sides of the equation on the left, I got to add two things to both sides of the equation on the right. So now I'm going to have a plus blank and then another plus blank. Okay, so piece of candy for whoever can tell me what you do to complete the square. I'm going to have to trust you guys to tell me who the student was that can figure out what it was to complete the square. You got to remember, half of b squared completes the square. What is your b? It's this middle term right here. Okay, so I'm going to take half of negative 10, which is negative 5, and I'm going to square that. Okay, so negative 5 times negative 5 is 25, so that's what goes in the blank. X squared minus 10x plus, and then I'll do this in green. 25 is this magical number that we're pulling out of thin air, because we basically took half of negative 10, which is negative 5, and then we squared it, and that became 25. So that's what we're going to put in that blank. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the y's. I've got y squared plus 8y. Okay, take half of that b. It's always going to be this middle term with just a single variable. It's never going to be the squared, and it's never going to be a constant. Take the single x and the single y. If I take half of 8 and square it, that's going to be 4. When I square that, that becomes 16. Okay, so plus blank, so 16 is what goes in this magical blank. Okay, that's going to be equal to the right hand side of the equation, which is plus 8, and then we have a plus blank and a plus blank. So the 25 goes in this blank, and then I also have to put a 25 in that blank. All I'm doing, guys, I'm keeping the seesaw balanced. I got a 25 bricks on the left, 25 bricks on the right, keeping the equation balanced. I added 16 bricks to the left. I got to add 16 bricks to the right to keep my equation balanced. Okay, so half of b squared, half of b squared, half of b squared is how to complete the square. Now, the whole reason for doing that, guys, is so that I can create a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so now you've got to remember, how do you factor the perfect square trinomial? Come back into focus. There we go. And if you guys remember, it's always going to be a parentheses squared piece. Always parentheses squared. So to figure out what goes in the parentheses squared piece, the little trick that I taught you guys was just half of b. Half of b squared is how to complete the square, and half of b is how it factors. So half of negative 10 is negative 5, so I'm going to have an x minus 5 in this little piece. Okay, same thing over here. Now I have a perfect square trinomial that I can factor. Okay, I got plus. Go ahead and put down your parentheses squared. And to figure out how the y's factor, it's just half of the middle term, half of b. Half of 8 is 4, so that's going to be a y plus 4. And then over here, I just combine my like terms. 8 plus 25 plus 16 becomes 49. And oh, looky look. Now we're in our standard form of our circle. And now I can tell you what the center and the radius are. I can't tell you what the center and the radius is up here. I have no idea because I'm not in this form. Okay. So after I complete the square, I can tell you. What do I do with my signs for the center? The center, we flippy flip. Flip that guy, 5. Flip that guy, negative 4. Okay, so that's my center. The radius, remember, this is r squared. I'll put that in parentheses. This is r squared. We don't want r squared. We want the radius, which is r. So I got to take the square root of 49, which is 7. Okay. All right, so I want you guys to digest that for a little bit. Study your notes. May want to pause the video for just a moment to let that sink in. And then I want you guys to pause the video, and I want you guys to try this one on your own. So go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, so hopefully you guys got this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to group my terms together. So I'm going to have the x's together, x squared plus the 6x, and then what? I've got a blank. Go ahead and write down your plus blank. And then I'm going to group the y's together. Y squared, and then the negative 12y. And then I'm going to have another blank. I'm going to complete the square twice. And then remember, I got to move this constant to the other side. So I'll just subtract 20 from both sides. That's going to equal negative 20. And then I'm going to have 2 more blanks, plus blank, plus blank. Okay, so now I'm ready to complete the square. Half of b squared is how you complete the square. So I'm going to take half of 6, which is 3, and I'm going to square that. That's 3 squared, which is 9. So 9 goes in that blank. And then I'm going to take, for the y's, I'm going to take half of negative 12, which is negative 6. I'm going to square that. Negative 6 times negative 6 is 36. Okay, so 36 goes in that magic blank. And then I've got to do the same thing on the right-hand side of the equation. 9 on the left, 9 on the right. 36 on the left, 36 on the right. All right, so now I'm ready to factor my perfect square trinomial for both the x's and the y's. That's going to be a plus right there. Okay, so how does the red box factor? Go ahead and write down your parentheses squared piece. I know it's going to be parentheses squared. To figure out what goes in that, it's going to be half of that number. Half of 6 is 3, so it'll be x plus 3. Plus parentheses squared. Half of the b term. Half of negative 12 is negative 6, so that'll be a y minus 6. Okay. And then on the right, I just combine my like terms. Negative 20 plus 9 plus 36 gives me a 25. Now I am in standard form, and now I'm ready to tell you what the center and the radius are. The center, I flippy flip. Flip the sign, negative 3. Flippy flip. Flip that, that becomes positive 6. Okay, this is r squared. I want r squared, I want the radius. So the radius will be the square root of 25, which of course will be 5. Okay. So again, let that sink in for just a moment. You guys are going to have to kind of look at this. This is not the easiest thing in the world when you see it, but after you do about 3 or 4 of these, you'll say, ah, that's easy. Just like anything in math, repetition, practice, practice, practice will help you get this down. Okay, so the last thing we need to cover is just one more example. So on the next page, you have this. Say, holy cow, holy smokes, Mr. Renise, what do I do here? I got a whole bunch of stuff here. Well, what do you notice that's different about that guy and the one we did earlier? What do you notice about all these numbers and these numbers? This has a number in front of the x squared, this does not. This has a number in front of the y squared, this does not. So just like we solved quadratics, guys, the first thing that we always want to do is see, is there a GCF that I can pull out? Is there greatest common factor? What do you notice about all these numbers? Yeah, they're even, but also what else? They're also divisible by 4, right? So let's factor out GCF of 4. Okay, so if I pull out a 4, after my camera refocuses, oh, that didn't help. Let's do it slowly. There we go. All right, so if I pull out a 4 from all of these numbers, I'll have 4 times, and then basically when you pull out a GCF, you just go back and divide every single one of these by 4. That will leave me with x squared. That will leave me with plus y squared. This will leave me with minus 6x. This will leave me with plus 4y. 32 over 4, that'll leave me with a plus 8 equals 0. Now, we factor out a 4. Well, guess what? If I divide both sides by 4, I'll just do this real quick, just real small. If I divide both sides by 4, 4 over 4 is just 1. 0 over 4 is just 0. So basically this 4 that you factor out just disappears. It just goes away. So now we're back to the problem that we just did. Okay, so I want to group my x's together. So I'm going to have x squared minus the 6x plus blank. I'm ready to complete the square. Now let's match up our y's. Plus y squared plus 4y. Here's that second blank, plus blank. Now I need to move this constant to the other side, so I'm going to have to subtract 8 from both sides. So that's going to give me a negative 8 on the right, and then I'm going to have 2 more blanks, the same 2 blanks that I have on the left-hand side. Remember, guys, when you take half of b and square it, it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative. You will always generate a positive number. So in this case, with these completing the square problems, it will always be plus blanks everywhere. Okay. All right, so now I'm ready to complete the square. So I'll take half of this number. Half of negative 6 is negative 3 squared. So once again, that's 9. So that magical 9 goes in that blank. Half of 4 squared is 2 squared. 2 squared is 4. So 4 goes in that magic blank. And then I'll just transfer these to the other side. 9 on the left, 9 on the right. 4 on the left, 4 on the right. Okay, now I'm ready to factor my perfect square trinomials. Got 2 of them. Okay, so let's go ahead and write down our parentheses squared piece. I know I'm going to have 2 parentheses squared pieces. Okay, what goes in here is half of the middle term, half of the b term. Half of negative 6 is negative 3, so that's x minus 3. Half of 4 is 2, so that's going to be y plus 2. And then combine your like terms. Negative 8 plus 9 plus 4 is 5. And now I got my standard form. My center is going to be flippy flip, 3 comma flip, negative 2. My radius is going to, this is r squared, so I got to take the square root of that. So my radius is actually going to be the square root of 5, which is approximately 2.2. Okay. All right. Not the easiest lesson, guys. Okay. This first lesson a little bit tricky, but if you study the lessons, the completed notes. The completed notes are on my website. I think you guys will be fine. We got some homework problems here in your notes I'd like you guys to try. So if you can work these problems, go back and refer to your completed notes, and I think you'll be able to figure it out. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this helps you, and we will see you on the next video.